You're watching Around the World, our top global stories. Even as Russia's invasion of Ukraine completes a year, Ukraine's President Zelensky has constantly been lobbying for military support, especially aerial combat support, or has been asking for fighter jets. Specifically, America-made F-16s. But much to his disappointment, America's President Joe Biden has clearly said no to providing F-16 fighter jets to aid Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Now, this comes after Biden's recent announcement that America would be sending 31 of its M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine. Washington was not willing to do so before, but its decision to do so persuaded Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz to send 14 of the Leopard 2 tanks from Germany. And that opened up a gateway for other European countries to follow suit. Germany's Defense Minister Pistorius also avoided commenting on the ongoing debate over the possibility of delivering fighter jets to Ukraine. France's President Emmanuel Macron says that Ukraine is yet to put in a formal request for fighter jets to France. France has already sent Ukraine air defense systems, rocket launcher units, cannons, and other military equipment, but has stopped short of sending battle tanks or heavy weaponry. Meanwhile, Netherlands' Prime Minister Mark Rutte is of the opinion that while there are no taboos in sending F-16 fighter aircraft to Ukraine, it would be a very big next step and not a possibility at the moment. On the other hand, NATO member Croatia's president has criticized Western powers for supplying Ukraine with heavy tanks and other weaponry. Zoran Milanovic said that delivering arms will only prolong the war further. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Zelensky thanked Denmark for its support, but reiterated that delivery of weapons must be expedited. He said that he was grateful to Denmark for its essential help in strengthening Ukrainian artillery, but highlighted critical issues at large.
I'm grateful to Denmark for its essential help in strengthening our artillery in particular. The critical issue here is speed. This is not about Denmark. It applies to all partners, all our friends and strategic partners who want to support Ukraine.
Reports are doing the rounds that Ukraine is confident of Poland supplying F-16 fighter jets. But even as Ukraine reports positive signals from Poland will make sure it acts only in consultation with NATO allies. However, all said and done, it's a straight no from Joe Biden as far as F-16s are concerned.
Will the United States provide F-16s to Ukraine?
No. Meanwhile, the UN has reported heavy fighting and major casualties in Ukraine. Critical facilities have been completely wrecked, and the warring sides are sizing up for renewed military pushes that is expected in the coming days. Shifting focus away from Ukraine, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on a 3-day visit to the Middle East or West Asia, and he visited violence-hit Jerusalem, urging Israel and Palestine to ease tensions. The bloodshed has reached a crescendo, alarming Biden administration in the U.S. as it attempts to find common ground with Netanyahu's brand new ultra-right-wing government in Israel. Blinken arrived following one of the deadliest periods of fighting in West Bank in years and pleaded with both the Israelis and the Palestinians to prevent a cycle of retribution. After months of elevated violence exploded in the recent days, a bloody Israeli military raid in the West Bank area and terrorist attacks within Jerusalem, leaving more than 20 people dead. As U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stood beside Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem, the two men spoke of an enduring bond between their countries.
We're urging all sides now to take urgent steps to restore calm, to de-escalate. We want to make sure that there's an environment in which we can, I hope, at some point create the conditions where we can start to restore a sense of security for Israelis and Palestinians alike, which of course is sorely lacking.
Netanyahu, meanwhile, made no reference to the recent flare-up of violence in the region, and in his only mention of the Palestinians in his speech, this is what he had to say.
Expanding the circle of peace, working to close, finally, the file of the Arab-Israeli conflict, I think would also help us achieve a workable solution with our Palestinian neighbors.
Now, these words were spoken even as deepening differences on a series of fundamental issues are placing the US-Israel relationship under stress. For example, in the context of a troubled relationship because of Israel's political rightward lurch and escalating violence. There are disagreements on matters including Iran's nuclear program and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Toothless affirmations of a vital alliance, it seemed as if the two men knew how difficult it has become to sustain the relationship. Israel has also been strained with mass protests. More than 1 lakh gathered in Tel Aviv recently, taking to the streets against Netanyahu and his plans to assert more political control over the country's courts. And the warning of a right-wing threat to democratic foundations is a concern that is shared by the US. The new Israeli coalition, which formed last month, is widely seen as the most right-wing and religious in Israel's history. Violence has spiked during the first weeks of the new government in office. Even as attacks continue in the West Bank area, Netanyahu has promised to take tough action against Palestine and ramp up settlement construction for Israel. Up next, the Amazon, the world's largest rainforest. It is facing its worst crisis ever, and Germany is coming to the rescue. Even as the man responsible for the Amazon's destruction, former Brazil President Jair Bolsonaro, is hiding in the US. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz arrived in the Brazilian capital of Brasilia. It was the last stop of his South America tour. He was there to meet President Lula da Silva, and they came together to send a strong message on environmental protection. Lula said that his administration will stop illegal gold mining, one of the main factors for deforestation in the Amazon. And Scholz said that Germany will offer all the support it can to Brazil to help save the Amazon.
And now,
it is indeed very good news for our planet that President Lula is committed to fighting climate change, to protect the Amazon, and to put an end to the deforestation.
Germany has pledged more than $220 million for environmental policies in Brazil. Of this, $38 million is a donation to the Amazon Fund. The Amazon Fund is the most important international cooperation effort to preserve the Amazon rainforest. So far, it has been mostly funded by Norway. In 2019, former far-right president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, who considered the Amazon an internal affair, dissolved the steering committee that selects sustainable projects to finance. In reaction, Germany and Norway both froze their donations towards the Amazon Fund. Under Bolsonaro, deforestation in Brazil's Amazon had reached a 15-year high as he dismantled environmental protection policies in favor of agriculture business expansion. Bolsonaro is currently hiding in the US. He left Brazil on the 30th of December, a day before his presidential term ended. His A1 visa, reserved for heads of state, has expired since it's valid only for 30 days. Bolsonaro can't come back to Brazil as he's facing a criminal inquiry for trying to topple the government. And so he has applied for a 6-month tourist visa in the US. Meanwhile, Lula da Silva, who took charge as Brazil's president at the beginning of 2023, has pledged to end all deforestation in Brazil by the year 2030, although his 4-year term ends in December 2026. Since he took office, Lula has had to face a humanitarian crisis with the indigenous Yanomami population that is native to the Amazon. Many have died of severe malnutrition and diseases, particularly malaria. On the 20th of January, a public health emergency was declared. The Amazon, which covers an area twice the size of India, is the world's biggest buffer against climate change, as its trees absorb a huge chunk of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. Roughly 2/3 of the Amazon rainforest is in Brazil. It's also the most biodiverse forest in the world and holds 20% of the world's fresh water. Moving on. New Zealand's largest city, Auckland, is still reeling under floods. It drowned after 6 inches of rain fell on a single day. And now Hawaii has been hit by heavy rain and has received more than double of what Auckland got. Hawaii, known for its sunny and warm beaches, is now under a flood watch. Its beaches are completely drenched. Maui, also known as the Valley of Isle, is one of the worst affected areas. Maui, Hawaii's second biggest island, got more than 13 inches of rainfall. That's nearly 33 centimeters. The storms have left the tourist destination in a complete mess. Rain and storm has left a lot of mud and debris all over the big island of Hawaii too. Weather warnings have been issued by Hawaiian emergency authorities. Every island in Hawaii is currently under flood watch, including its biggest island, the Big Island. According to the National Weather Services Office of Hawaii, public facilities and schools will remain closed until further notice. The famous Kiliakala National Park in Maui has also been shut due to the hazardous conditions. Meanwhile, flash flood and surf advisories have been issued via social media. It's the last coal mine in the Arctic, the northernmost point on the planet. The mine is in Norway's Svalbard, where the sun never rises in the winter. But the mining town is heating up faster than the rest of the Arctic. The town also has what is known as the northernmost church in the world. Keeping a light burning becomes more than a metaphor for the Svalbard church. The church was founded a century ago for the coal miners who settled there. Store Norsk, the Norwegian company still operating the last remaining coal mine, built the church in the year 1921. The last Norwegian coal mine in Svalbard was supposed to close this year in 2023, only to get a reprieve until 2025 because of the energy crisis driven by the war in Ukraine. The switch this year from coal-fired to diesel-powered energy production at the plant, which prompted the mine's decision to shut down, is expected to cut carbon dioxide emissions by half. In the meanwhile, Svalbard's natural environment has been changing fast with rising temperatures. Unusual winter rains unsettle the snowpack, leading to more avalanches. The archipelago is one of the world's fastest warming spots. Svalbard is in the midst of all kinds of change. Climate change and the change in the way of life and work. And the church's anchoring role seems poised to remain the only constant. The church has prayers about climate in worship services and even holds a climate change mass. And finally, we take you to Spain, where there's a festival for almost all things under the sun, including one to celebrate the winter migration of cattle, where groups of men and women dressed up as cows and ranchers run through the streets. There is no real cattle at the festival of Vaquilla, the Spanish word for cow. Instead, teams dress up in traditional costumes with one person carrying the cow structure at the center. The colorful procession enters the town square where the vaquilla, or the cow, dances for the audience. The sound of bells and the cracking of a slingshot make it a noisy event for this town near capital Madrid. After the pandemic, the festival has recovered its traditional format and hundreds of citizens and visitors are enjoying the festivities. The event recreates the winter migration of cattle, the driving of cattle depicted by dances through the streets. After the group performance in the town square, the death of the vaquilla, or the cow, is symbolized with 3 shots fired into the air. Then the nighttime celebrations begin. Limonada, a typical drink of red wine and soda water, is handed out to all the participants to round off the festivities. Also, ring-shaped pastry and snacks are served as well. Historians describe similar festivals celebrated by the Romans, disguised with animal skins and horns, and they used to run after women, symbolizing an attempt to revive fertility after winter. And that's all we have time for on this edition of Around the World. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it with News 9+.